you're probably doing that Hollywood thing where everybody else is just there for you.
I think Ryan Reynolds inserted himself here and said, I'm going to take this guy down. I think that that's kind of what has evolved out of this.
Something big just happened. Joe Rogan just put Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds on blast. And this time, there's no way out. For months, the whispers have been growing louder. People have been asking questions about the accusations, about the legal battle, about why Hollywood protects some people and destroys others. And now, we have answers. Because Joe Rogan just broke it all open, and the receipts, they're damning. He's calling out Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds for what they really are, and what he said about Justin Baldoni, that's what's really sending shockwaves. Because while Lively and Reynolds are still walking red carpets, making movies, and collecting checks, Baldoni has been fighting for his life. And when he finally resurfaced, people barely recognized him. A shaved head, a hollow look, the face of a man who had been through hell. At first, people mocked him, but when the truth came out, nobody was laughing. Because this isn't just a Hollywood feud, this is about power, deception, a career being wiped out overnight. And once you hear the full story, you'll never look at Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds the same way again. Joe Rogan doesn't hold back. He's not part of Hollywood's inner circle. He's not playing the PR game. When something seems off, he calls it out. And this time, he's going after two of Hollywood's biggest stars. On a recent podcast, Rogan sat down with Brendan Schaub, former UFC fighter turned commentator, and they didn't sugarcoat a thing. They laid it all out. The cover-up, the manipulation, the receipts. Because for months, Blake Lively has been playing the victim, while quietly destroying another actor's career. That actor? Justin Baldoni. You know him from Jane the Virgin, 5 Feet Apart, and his work as a director. He's been in the business for years. He built his career from the ground up. But now, he's being erased. And here's where it gets dark. Because legal documents confirm that Blake Lively invited Baldoni into her dressing room during filming. She was breastfeeding at the time. She personally asked him to come in. He walked in because she told him to. But later, she flipped the script. She told producers that Baldoni had intruded. She made it sound sinister, like he had done something terrible. Except there's a problem. Text messages prove otherwise. The messages tell a completely different story. Blake was friendly, casual, playful. She made the invitation clear as day. She even joked about it. But when Baldoni refused to play Hollywood's game, that's when things changed. And now, his entire career is on the line. Joe Rogan didn't just touch on this story, he blew it wide open. He said exactly what Hollywood doesn't want people to hear. That Lively and Reynolds have been getting away with too much for too long. That Baldoni is being destroyed, not because he did anything wrong, but because he refused to stay silent. That this isn't just a case of Hollywood turning its back on someone. This is deliberate career sabotage. And here's where it gets even worse. Because Baldoni has the proof, the messages, the receipts, the undeniable evidence. But Hollywood doesn't care. Because the system is rigged. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are protected. They have the power, the influence, the industry behind them. And Justin Baldoni, he's just another casualty. But before we continue with these deep dives, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next shocking update.
Joe Rogan becomes the latest celebrity to blast Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Also, the heartbreaking reason why Justin Baldoni has this new look.
While Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were busy protecting their empire, Justin Baldoni was falling apart. It didn't happen overnight. It was slow, calculated. A series of events that pushed him to the edge. At first, he thought it was just rumors, the whispers, the phone calls that suddenly stopped coming, the projects that had been greenlit, and then disappeared. Then, the pattern became clear. He was being cut off. Big-name directors, people who had been begging him to collaborate, suddenly weren't responding to his texts. Producers who had promised him roles, they were now going in a different direction. It wasn't just a cold shoulder. It was an execution, and it was working. Baldoni tried to stay strong. He kept his head down. He pushed forward. But behind the scenes, he was crumbling. Friends say he stopped eating. He lost weight fast. He barely slept. His energy was gone. He spent hours staring at his phone, waiting for calls that never came. This was a man who had once been at the top of his game, now reduced to a shell of himself. Then it got worse, because when the media started catching wind of the Blake Lively situation, the hit pieces started dropping. Entertainment sites, celebrity blogs, tabloids, they all started pushing the same story, that Baldoni was difficult to work with, that he was burnt out, that he had walked away from Hollywood on his own terms. It was a blatant lie, but that didn't matter, because by the time he realized what was happening, it was too late. The final straw came when Baldoni saw something that broke him. A photo. Not of himself, but of Ryan Reynolds, at a TED Talk, standing in front of a packed crowd, laughing, smiling, making jokes, giving a speech about overcoming adversity. The irony was sickening. While Baldoni was fighting for his life, Ryan Reynolds was thriving. While Baldoni was being erased, Reynolds was being celebrated. That was the moment. That was when Baldoni knew Hollywood was never going to let him win. So he did the only thing he could do. He walked away. One day he was in LA. The next, gone. No red carpets, no interviews, no new projects. He had vanished. For months, nobody knew where he was. Then, one single photo surfaced. Justin Baldoni standing on a beach in Hawaii. But something was different. His hair, gone. His once bright, confident face, hollow, tired, changed. The man Hollywood once couldn't get enough of was now unrecognizable. At first, people mocked him. They called him washed up, weak, broken. But when the truth came out, nobody was laughing. Because this wasn't just a new look. This was a man who had been pushed to his breaking point. While Justin Baldoni is fighting for his survival, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, they're thriving. They're still getting movie deals, still sitting front row at fashion shows, still living their perfect Hollywood life. And yet, no one is asking the real questions. How did this happen? Why did Baldoni lose everything, while Lively and Reynolds walked away untouched? Because in Hollywood, power protects power. And if you speak out, they make sure you regret it. But this time, the world is watching. And if Joe Rogan is talking about it, then trust me, this story is far from over.
With our documentary, a lot of people are afraid to come forward and afraid to speak out. Thankfully, we've had some really brave people come forward.
Justin Baldoni didn't just leave Hollywood, he fled. One day, he was in LA, drowning under the weight of accusations and blacklisting. The next, he was on a plane to Hawaii with nothing but a suitcase and his family. It wasn't a vacation, it was an escape. Because for Baldoni, staying in Hollywood meant staying in a war zone, a place where every move he made was being twisted against him, where his name was being whispered in industry meetings, blacklisted behind closed doors, where powerful people were making one thing very clear: you don't belong here anymore. So he left. But the man who landed in Hawaii wasn't the same man who left LA for months Baldoni had shut down. He barely spoke to anyone outside his family. He stopped checking his phone, stopped reading the news. He was a man at rock bottom. Then, one day, it happened. He saw a photo of himself, taken just 1 year earlier. His face was fuller, healthier, alive. His eyes had light in them. And the man standing in the mirror now? A stranger. His cheeks were sunken. His skin was pale. He looked haunted. That was the moment he made a decision. If Hollywood was going to destroy him, he wasn't going to go down without a fight. He walked into the bathroom, picked up a razor, and shaved it all off. His hair, his beard, everything that tied him to the past. He wasn't trying to reinvent himself. He was starting over. But when the public saw him for the first time, they didn't understand. The first picture of Baldoni in months hit the internet like a bombshell. People were stunned. The clean-cut leading man they once knew was gone. In his place, a man who looked like he had been through war. Twitter exploded with reactions. What happened to Justin Baldoni? He looks so different. Is he okay? This is what Hollywood does to people. At first, some people mocked him. They said he had lost it, that he was having some kind of midlife crisis, that he had let himself go. But then, the real story came out. The truth about what happened behind the scenes, the legal battles, the blacklisting, the way his entire career had been ripped away overnight. And suddenly, nobody was laughing anymore. While Baldoni was starting over from scratch, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were thriving, they were still walking red carpets, still making millions, still being celebrated. And here's the part that made people furious. Blake Lively wasn't just ignoring the scandal, she was doubling down. She made public appearances, smiling for the cameras, acting like nothing had happened. And Ryan Reynolds, he stayed quiet. He didn't defend Baldoni. He didn't acknowledge the accusations. Instead, he let Hollywood do what Hollywood does best, bury the truth. And it worked, because while Baldoni was fighting for his life, Lively and Reynolds were being handed new opportunities. New movie deals, new brand partnerships. It was like the scandal had never even happened. Hollywood wanted people to forget about Justin Baldoni. But Joe Rogan did the opposite. He put the full spotlight on everything, on Lively, on Reynolds, on the entire corrupt system that lets powerful people escape accountability. He read the messages, the receipts, the evidence. He laid it all out step by step, showing how Blake Lively manipulated the truth to take down a man who refused to play Hollywood's game. And the moment Rogan spoke, people started paying attention. Because when someone as big as Joe Rogan calls out Hollywood's lies, the world listens. And suddenly, this story wasn't just about Justin Baldoni, it was about every single person Hollywood has erased before him. And this time, the truth isn't going away.
Sweet. Justin Baldoni calling out Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, saying they effed up.
The second Joe Rogan put a spotlight on the scandal, Hollywood went into full damage control mode. They weren't expecting this much backlash. They thought the public would move on, forget, stop caring. But Rogan's podcast reached millions, and suddenly, people weren't just asking questions. They were demanding answers. Why was Justin Baldoni really blacklisted? Why were Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds being protected? Why did powerful executives cover up the truth while Baldoni was being silenced? Hollywood had two choices: admit the truth or bury it deeper, and they chose the second option. Almost overnight, a wave of articles started flooding the internet. But they weren't attacking Lively or Reynolds. They were going after Baldoni. Stories popped up about how he was difficult on set, that he had a bad reputation in the industry, that just maybe he was the one to blame for his own downfall. It was the same old Hollywood trick: paint the victim as the villain, rewrite history, and make people forget what really happened. But this time, it wasn't working. Because the public was smarter. They saw through the lies. They saw how Hollywood was protecting its own while Baldoni was being erased. And then, something happened that nobody saw coming. For months, Baldoni had been silent. He had disappeared, cut himself off from the world. But now, he was done hiding. In a jaw-dropping interview, Baldoni broke his silence for the first time. And what he revealed left Hollywood shaking. He didn't just confirm everything. He went even further. He exposed the private conversations, the backroom deals, the exact way Hollywood blacklists people who step out of line. And the worst part? He had the proof. Emails, text messages, legal documents. It was all real. Everything he had lost, his career, his reputation, his place in Hollywood, was because he refused to play by their rules. And the moment he said that, everything changed. Because now, this wasn't just about Baldoni anymore. This was about every single actor, director, and producer who had been blacklisted before him. Hollywood had spent decades covering up its crimes. But now, the truth was finally coming out. And this time, they couldn't stop it. Hollywood thought they won. They thought Justin Baldoni would stay silent, that people would forget, that they could keep controlling the narrative like they always have. But this time, they miscalculated. Joe Rogan's podcast reached millions. Baldoni's interview broke the internet. The evidence is out in the open, and no amount of damage control can bury it now. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are still smiling for the cameras. They're still walking red carpets, acting like nothing happened. But behind the scenes, they know the truth. And they know that the public isn't fooled anymore, because this isn't just about one actor's career being destroyed. It's about a corrupt system finally being exposed. Hollywood is crumbling from the inside. And now, people are finally paying attention. The question is, who's next?